Welcome to the FHS podcast. Again, we are here for the FHS World 2026 Advisory Board meeting, but I have another amazing guest here with me today, Mr. Varun Kapur from Kapur and Partners Family Office. Varun, it's a pleasure having you here. Thank you for joining the Advisory Board meeting. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for sharing and what we will be talking about. Tell me a little bit, before we start talking about the markets and everything, tell me a little bit about the family office that you're running and what is the background in your and your families in the hospitality industry.
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I've been part of the FHS community for a while, and you guys keep getting better and better. So congratulations on really becoming the central place of convening and conversations around hospitality, because it's, I think, an industry that is evolving very quickly. Amazing new operators, amazing investors coming in, but it's still early days in terms of, especially in the Middle East. People don't understand it as much. And as we look at emerging markets, I think this is the future. So it's exciting to be here. Personally, our family, we're from India. We've been in Dubai for 36 years, so I grew up here. This is home. But, our family's been in hospitality for 3 generations in India. So both my grandfathers were in hotels and the other one in restaurants, and was relatively successful. And then my mother and her brother also kind of went ahead with that. But personally, I've never been an operator. Like, my family comes from operating, but I've, worked as an entrepreneur, but never in the hospitality business. But I've worked in the investment industry, working with our own family business group. So we have a number of different businesses. The word family office is thrown around, but yeah, we're a conglomerate and we have different initiatives that we work on. But I also work with a lot of other family offices on their investment allocation and allocating to the hospitality industry. So yeah, very passionate about hospitality and the future of where that's going. And yeah, happy to be here.
Now that you said you work a lot with family offices, and family offices is something that people just like to hear. It's always interesting to see what type of family offices invest in hospitality. Now, tell me, what do you see as the allocation interest in the hospitality industry from the family offices within the past year and a half? Has it changed?
Yeah. So firstly, let's take it even a bit further back, right? So let's take COVID. COVID came and travel came to a standstill, and property valuations probably got compressed by up to 40%. And that's where, the smart investors smelt blood on the streets, where they were always, looking for good deals. And the owners of these assets, some of them who have financial difficulties, some of them are in distress, started selling. So back then, during the COVID time, we actually saw a massive increase in transactions.
Okay.
Yeah, which was actually quite interesting, because when people had to sell, the buyers are ready, everyone likes a good deal, and that's what was happening. When we came out of COVID, we all experienced a very strong rebound in the travel industry, which is still rebounding right now. I mean, it doesn't seem to stop, which is fantastic. So that rebound kind of coincided with an increase in interest rates, an increase in inflation, and more operational costs increasing. So as the increase in transaction and more families and institutional investors are investing in the asset class, we started seeing a kind of a slowdown, because geopolitics and the interest rate environment kind of really got things a bit complicated, where we saw towards the end of 2023, 2024, there was a decrease in transactions that kind of took place. People were kind of like just waiting and watching, because the interest rates had peaked. There was like a 23-year high.
Yeah.
And that's where, things started rebalancing. And now in the last 18 months, coming back to your question, is where we're kind of starting to see again an uptick in transactions, because interest rates started coming down. There's a bit more kind of clarity on the position that the Fed and, other countries are taking. But more importantly, the RevPAR, and and you see the ADRs, but the RevPAR particularly has been increasingly resilient across markets. So we're seeing amazing metrics, and hotels are doing really well. And that's where we're seeing, more and more investors now seeing this as not as a cyclical asset class anymore. It's a stable, institutionalized asset class, which gives you kind of a fixed yield, or a predictable yield, if you want to say.
I think we've seen that really, as you said, in the past few years, that hospitality before COVID, as you said, it was part of that alternative asset.
Yeah.
It was always, when we would ask, are you investing in hospitality? They would go, no, we're not interested in an alternative.
Yeah.
But now it looks like it became one of the stable asset classes that everyone is kind of looking and they want to have a share of it.
Exactly.
But now, regarding now going back to private offices, do you see them transacting more into single assets or portfolio deals?
Yeah. So short answer is definitely more and more single asset investments is a lot more desirable right now. I'm not saying portfolio deals are not. There's a time and place for that, and that will come at a different time of the cycle, which is maybe a bit further down the line. But right now, it's a perfect time for single asset deals for various reasons. The first reason I would like to say is there is a lot of good. Is this easy to manage when you're looking at cost controls? We're looking at differentiation. We're looking at location. Because again, when it comes down to geopolitics and how do you manage things that are not in your control, it's much easier to control one asset and then really manage and optimize that asset. And because today also there's a lot of new technologies and new ways of operating and new business models coming in the hospitality space, you want to really get that one or two assets really under your full control before you scale across. Also, families don't have the infrastructure to manage multiple assets. A lot of these families, it's like a trophy asset back in the day. It's like, oh, I own a hotel, downtown London. That was cool. But now it's like they want to own an asset that they can hang out with their kids in the forests, and that's actually more happy. So I think a mindset is changing of the investor, and then on the portfolio part, that's where the institutions come in. They're just waiting for these deals, and these family operators, individually owned operators, they want to eventually exit to these institutions.
Of course.
So they eventually have it in their plan as, okay, well, I'm going to build up 10 assets, then we'll roll it up into a structure and then we'll sell it. And yeah, that's what we're seeing. But right now, single and then eventually portfolio.
And in terms of markets and locations, you said you work with family offices and their investments in the Middle East, in Europe and in Africa. How do you see markets change? How do you see their interest in different markets change? Is Europe more attractive now or is it Africa? I know it probably depends on each family office, but I'm sure there's some group that you can say you see actually the interest just going from this market maybe towards another one.
Yes. I love this question because I'm like economics buff. Like for me, I love macroeconomics and how the world moves and the geopolitics that support that. So I would say the hottest market right now is definitely where we're sitting right now, is the UAE and Saudi Arabia. And that is simply because we have a stable government that is massively investing in infrastructure, in tourism policies, and building the right brand to attract travel and migration, business setup. Families want to live here. And they've invested in infrastructure for the last 20 years where you have landmarks such as the Burj Khalifa or Al Ula, where these are all coming online right now. So it really is a top-down approach where the government has to set the right, regulatory frameworks.
Incentives, maybe?
Incentives, labor policies, all these small things that eventually builds up to having a stable economy. And that's when then FDI will come in. Like, governments or families from other countries will invest in your country if they see stability, which is what's happening here. So UAE and Saudi is definitely the top. And then I would say Europe, not tier one cities. Tier one cities is great, right? London, Paris, Madrid, perfect. But what about Prague? What about Milan? These are the cities now that are really up and coming, where you have beautiful assets that are family owned, that need an upgrade. They're looking for JV partners, or maybe the family patriarch, is getting old, which is what's happening now. A lot of baby boomers who own a lot of these assets are now like, okay, I'm done. And the kids are not into operating, so they're looking to sell. So that's where a lot of investors can get good deals. So Europe is great. And Asia is actually, obviously, Asia has always been the hub of tourism. It's the main driver of tourism. But we're seeing some slowdown because of some Chinese capital controls. Okay. Chinese outbound travel is slowed down a bit, but it will rebound. But Asia is always going to be hot.
What about Africa?
Africa is it's like up and coming. We talked about this in FHS, right? You had the whole half morning discussion on Africa. So we're just scratching the surface on Africa. And I've been to countries in Africa like Mozambique, like Rwanda, which people don't know anything about. And I've been to these places and they're just beautiful. And they're waiting and they're very welcoming. And again, but the issue there is political stability,
policies, right?
And currency risk.
Okay, yes.
Like you can invest, but can you take money out? And this is the issue now in Africa. It's mostly coming down to currency risk because now a lot of these governments are stable. Angola, very stable, oil and gas money. Mozambique, okay. Rwanda, very stable. Zambia, Botswana, all stable countries, but can you get your money back out? So this is the issue now. And then the devaluation of currency. So this kind of scares investors. And this is, and families as well. Is like, you own money, like, do I just go dump it there or do I just go to Milan? So this is the...
Maybe I'll get a little bit less at the end of the return, but at least it's safe. My money is safe there.
So maybe then we should talk to families within Africa who are more comfortable with that risk dynamic, who have relationships, they know how to move money around.
Yeah.
And that's where they can play that game.
And when you consult family offices about entering new locations, new markets, what are the non-negotiables that you stand by? You say, no, we wouldn't suggest going there.
Yeah. The first thing I would always say is, what is the demand drivers for tourism in that country? So you have to work backwards and figure out, like we discussed, the macroeconomic, the microeconomic, the policy frameworks. So making sure that they have stable demand that is being developed and generated, and a tourism plan. Okay. Like as an example, like in 2007, my first job was in PwC Consulting, where I worked with the Abu Dhabi government and the Oman government on the 2030 tourism development plan. And now we're nearly there, and we've seen what's happened. These countries were serious back then, and I was working on these consulting projects. And now we're seeing 2040 vision in the region, but it really comes down to the government of how they're really putting the right frameworks in place. And the second is really into, what is the geopolitics in the world? We're living in extremely interesting times, to put it simply, and you have to be comfortable with the risk, in entering these markets. Yeah.
Now that you mentioned that you were working on the plans for 2030, do you see them that they actually came through, that they were proceeded through by the governments, or do you see that actually they change throughout the years? What can you, if you compare now what has been done and what is happening now, is that it?
Yeah, I wish I remember the details of what we put into the report. 2007, it's been nearly 20 years. But, the proof is in the pudding, right? You see what's happening in Abu Dhabi. Yeah. If you just look at Abu Dhabi, with all the way they differentiated themselves, with cultural tourism, with religious and spiritual tourism, with arts and all that, like it's on the map. With the airline, there's a lot of work we did on airline strategy. So I think they did a great job in using the airline as the core facilitator of tourism. And I grew up going to Oman, one of my favorite places, but now they're really investing in real estate infrastructure, master community developments. So Oman now, I think, is going to be really coming online. And for me, I'm super excited. Oman, I just learned, has 3,100 kilometers of coastline.
Oh, wow.
That's insane. Angola, which I'm also working with right now, 1,600. But Oman is and untouched. Like nothing is happening on this coastline. So just, you do the math, right? Like what's the potential?
So talking about future markets.
Yes.
Except Oman, what would you say that are the markets that you would be really keen to look after because you think there's a big potential there?
Yeah. We touched on Africa, but I would say Africa, but I'm not going to touch on it again because I think I've already mentioned it, but countries like Angola and Mozambique and Zimbabwe has a lot of issues, but a lot of potential. And then you have even countries like Nigeria and Ghana, which have a lot of assets, completely a different part of Africa, but these all coming online. So Africa, you have to play differently. 54 countries, you got to know how to navigate in each. A lot of times we throw Africa very loosely.
Exactly. Yes.
But the different languages, different structures,
everything is
different. So
the largest continent, and we say Africa like it's one place.
And also, you should not forget the Americas. You still have the US, and you have, US and even Canada have so much beauty. And we look at US, we're looking at the revival of urban centers. Okay. So yes, we talk about luxury and longevity, and we talk about resorts, but there's a massive play because America has amazing tier 2 cities and amazing tier 3 cities. And these cities have a lot of people flowing through them. If you can go and find really good assets that you can put into upgrade into the urban environment, is I think in terms of actual return, without making super hype, you make good money as just a financial investor. It's like a no-brainer.
What about India? So you know your family, your background is from India. Your hospitality actually roots are from India.
Yes, absolutely.
So what about India?
India is, so my mother is from Udaipur, which is the city of lakes. It's one of the most beautiful cities in India. So I grew up going there. And you have the Lake Palace, which is where my mom used to work as well. So that's now owned by the Taj operates it. But the royal family, the family kind of owns these assets. So India is massively on the map. Udaipur, for example, is the number one wedding destination in India, maybe most in the world after some places in Turkey and Thailand might be one of the leading places. So, India is just opening up for tourism in the last 5 years. They launched a big campaign called Incredible India. And they've eased in visa rules. You can easily apply online now and you get a visa. There's 3 new airlines that have literally launched in the last year. That's mostly for local transport, but they're fixing their airlines and the way they kind of operate. It was inefficient when the government was running it. Now Taj runs it, so there's a lot of things happening there. So they're fixing a lot of structural issues that was, I believe, not dealt with for 50 years since independence. And they're only dealing with this in the last 3-4 years. So, I mean, India doesn't care about people visiting it, as much as they care about local domestic tourism.
Yes.
That tourism is not, it's like, again, 1%, so the real game in India is the local tourism.
Well, I think that if we look at Saudi and compare the market, it's very similar in terms of the visitors. Yeah. It's still very much local visitors that are coming to Saudi.
Yes.
And then international. So what do you think about Saudi market?
So I would say local visitors and religious tourism.
Yes, tourism.
Right? So maybe 50% of the tourism is religious, maybe even 70%, I think. It's a massive, massive bulk. So we're seeing a lot of interesting developments now in the Mecca, Medina area. A lot of families and local developers are now setting up frameworks there.
Yes.
And they're having new regulations come into Saudi as well. So now on the residential side, they're opening up freehold.
I think they already did.
Yeah, so
I think just a few weeks ago.
It's happening as we speak. So the freehold for residential is opening up, but also in terms of ownership in hotels, there's like 6-7 new rules that have been launched where like individuals can own hospitality assets or a fraction piece of it. And this also connects to the whole fractionalized movement, right? Tokenization of real estate, which the UAE and Saudi are quite advanced. That's another whole conversation, but that's also going to enable kind of investment flows into these countries. And Saudi, listen, I was in Alula in 2020 when no one even knew about it. I was invited and I went there and I spent 2 nights there, and it's mind-blowing. If you haven't been, you need to go, because I've been to the Grand Canyon, I've traveled the world, but this place is special. And there's other special places in Saudi Arabia where it's just like very heart-opening and you're like, wow, there's something very, very deep here. So they're just getting started and so much to do.
Varun, my last question, if you would now be able to, if you would have a chance right now to invest into your own hotel, where it would be and what kind of hospitality product would that be? What's the closest to your heart?
Yes, the closest to my heart is wellness tourism.
Okay.
And specifically, wellness is, you think spa, but it's really about, there's a term that's being thrown around. It's called longevity hospitality. And this for me is like my mantra now. It's like my North Star, where everything I'm doing toward in this industry is really like, how is it relating to longevity and hospitality? Because today people are not going to hospitals, they're going to hotels to heal, and that's the game. How do you create these spaces of rejuvenation where you bring in obviously the hospitality, but then the right treatments and leverage technology, but also leverage ancient wisdom, right? You want to bring that combination of ancient and modern. And if an operator can put these pieces together in a nature surroundings, you can be in the Masai Mara or you can be, in India somewhere in the forest. And that's where I'm seeing, if I have to build a hotel, I would do it either in the African savannah or in the Indian outback. And, these are the 2 places where I would love to build some assets, and we're working on a few projects. But that's really where it is. But the most important thing that I think we haven't mentioned yet is really how we integrating technology into our operations. Because we can find a nice place, but the idea is, what's the future of tech, right? Travel tech, prop tech, hospitality tech. It's massively improving operations. We're already seeing operators improve their profitability by 10 to 15% because they're doing demand forecasting. They're doing, revenue analysis and pricing, dynamic pricing. They're putting all this, and AI is just coming and figuring out your data.
With the data that they have, they can run it. Yeah.
And you have to run it. That's if you don't do that, you're falling behind, and you're going to lose out 10% on your net profit. And that's really the game.
That's that game changer.
It's the game changer. That's the game changer. So, so it's like figuring out your systems, differentiating, figuring out where your brand is. Like I recently spoke to a new operator. He's starting a new range of hotel brands. He spent 2 years, mind you, he has other job right now and he's building other stuff as well, but he spent 2 years just figuring out his brand. Like, how are you differentiating your brand in the market? How do you differentiate not only from the Marriotts, but how do you differentiate from Habitas? How do you differentiate from other unique operators that are like starting to scale? Because you have to have a story that resonates with your target market.
Okay, wellness. Well,
wellness, yes.
We really hope that we'll see your hotel coming to fruition at some point. Thank you so much, Varun, for the conversation.
Thank you.
And please enjoy the advisory board meeting. And we'll see you at the FHS World in September.
Yes.
And I hope maybe we'll have another interesting discussion to see how family offices what has changed in their investment strategies. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.